Although they might seem like a superstar team today, the Avengers had historically been one of Marvel's most middle-of-the-road comics in terms of popularity. But that all changed in the early 2000s when Marvel's newest hotshot writer, Brian Michael Bendis, took the reins of the team and brought the Avengers into a new era. For the next decade, Bendis told a massive saga of these new Avengers, with it all building up to Secret Invasion, a climax that would shake the team's foundation to its very core. Most notably though, Tony Stark made mistake after mistake, which ultimately allowed for control of the planet to fall into the hands of some of the world's most powerful villains. Hello and welcome to Comic Drake, where I talk about comic books. My name is Drake. Let's talk about it. But before getting too far into things, I want to give a big thank you to the sponsor of today's video, Dave. Now, I've been trying to get some soundproofing work done here in my office, and it's been getting expensive really fast. And a banking app like Dave is super helpful in getting a little bit of cash right away. As a part of a Dave spending account, users are able to get the included extra cash feature to get up to $500 instantly with no interest, no late fees, and no credit check. All you're doing is getting a little bit of help from the future you, which means more money to fill your tank, catch up on bills, or get your car repaired without having to wait for your next paycheck. Millions have already gotten the help they need with extra cash, and you can too by downloading Dave today at dave.com/comicdrake. Once again, that's dave.com/comicdrake. Sign up for an extra cash account to get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Eligibility criteria and instant transfer fees apply. Banking services provided by Evolve, member FDIC. Since the very beginning of the new Avengers, Bendis had wanted to write a story arc inspired by Invasion of the Body Snatchers. However, when Marvel released the Civil War event, he decided to rearrange his plans.
I originally would have released the scrolls right around Civil War, but since I was there for the planning of Civil War and helped create the initial conflict of it, all I kept thinking about was, boy does this help my scroll thing. If I reveal that the scrolls were there the whole time and they let, if not nudged, the heroes into beating the shit out of each other, I've got myself a book.
Originally, Secret Invasion was just going to be an arc in Bendis' Avengers comic, but after talking about these plans non-stop for about 4 years, the higher-ups at Marvel started seeing dollar signs in their eyes, and they demanded that he go bigger. They wanted this to be as big of an event as Civil War. Many years ago, the Kree and the Skrull empires went to war, and the ensuing battles made their way to Earth, which required the Avengers to get involved and end the conflict. In the aftermath, major figures in the superhero community came together to create a shadowy organization called the Illuminati to prevent anything like it from ever happening again. One of their first moves was to teleport to the Skrulls' homeworld to flex their muscles and say, "What up, bitches? We're the Illuminati. Next time you want to mess with Earth, you gotta get through us." But this backfired so badly, with the entire team getting captured and experimented on. Now, fortunately they were able to escape, but during their time in captivity, the Skrulls extracted valuable data from them. See, the Empire had used this data to create a new breed of Super Skrull that perfectly replicated the abilities of any Earthling that they had the DNA of, and they could even mix and match power sets. But they also went one step further. For many years, the top Skrull scientists cloned Reed Richards over and over and over again to use his brilliant mind to come up with a revolutionary breakthrough that would make their shapeshifting fully undetectable. I'm talking about being able to avoid being seen by technology, psychic scans, and even magical detection. The trade-off, though, is that they must fully have their memories wiped and replaced with those of the person they're swapping places with, unable to change back to their original form until their death. With these newly enhanced agents, the Skrulls began kidnapping important figures on Earth, and in turn, they harvested their biological data in order to create even more agents. It's this vicious cycle of espionage. Around the same time, a deeply religious Skrull princess named Varanki begged the Emperor to read her holy text, which prophesied the destruction of their homeworld, and that in turn, they were meant to claim Earth as their new home. For the sake of her people, the princess begged the Emperor to make the proper preparations before it was too late. Though instead, the Emperor labeled the princess as a religious zealot and banished her off-world. Though, lo and behold, their homeworld was destroyed just as it was foretold. The remaining Skrulls brought Varanki out of exile, anointed her as their queen, and by utilizing the recent scientific achievements, she got to work on planning a secret invasion. Choosing to lead by example, the Queen herself underwent the disguise treatment by taking on the form of Spider-Woman in order to infiltrate the Avengers and gather up all the data she needed to find the best time to strike. Even with dozens, if not hundreds of Skrull agents in place, a full-scale invasion of Earth would be tricky because of a couple of factors: mutants and Asgardians. but in a stroke of luck, both were wiped off the board at nearly the same time. See, when the Scarlet Witch had a mental breakdown, she cast a spell that depowered most of the mutants on the planet, taking the global population from about 1 million to around 300. As for the Asgardians, they had recently gone through the cataclysmic cycle of Ragnarok and were now hanging out in Oklahoma, still recovering from being reborn into new bodies. Although the Skrulls had been planning the secret invasion for years, the superhuman community started to catch on when a group of heroes killed Elektra, the leader of an evil clan of ninjas who reverted into a Skrull upon her death. This body ended up in the possession of Tony Stark, who took it to his fellow members of the Illuminati, hoping to get to the bottom of things before the inevitable large-scale attack and panic. Yet, this was interrupted when Black Bolt, who famously has a voice that is so powerful that he can obliterate a battalion with a whisper, spoke. Yeah, he had been replaced by a Super Skrull for a good while, and he used his vast power to unleash a massive blast on the Illuminati. Luckily, the team was powerful enough to fight off the Infiltrator and his Super Skrull reinforcements, but if someone as high-ranking as King Black Bolt could be snatched up, then nobody could be trusted. And with the wounds of the superhuman civil war still being fresh, the community became even further divided. At this point in time, Stark was the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he brought Skrull-Elektra to their lab in order to get to the bottom of how the little green men were able to become fully undetectable. Also brought on board were two of the greatest scientists on the planet, Reed Richards and Hank Pym. But when word got out that their Black Bolt imposter had been taken out, the Skrulls started making moves to cripple Earth's defenses before their existence became widely known. SWORD's orbital headquarters was destroyed. A Sue Storm doppelganger sent the Baxter Building and the remaining Fantastic Four into the negative zone. But most notably, a Skrull prisoner ship crash-landed in the Savage Land, the wild part of Antarctica that is Marvel's excuse to just have dinosaurs and stuff. This ship was intercepted by 2 separate Avengers teams, but when it opened up, dozens of heroes came out in their classic outfits. They claimed that they were kidnapped by the Skrulls years ago and that they had been held prisoner, asserting that all of the heroes that we had been following all this time were actually sleeper agents. Was this true? Have some of our favorite heroes actually been Skrulls this whole time? Is this the reason why heroes have been constantly fighting amongst themselves in recent years? I actually really like the scene when Wonder Man was interacting with the classic version of Beast, who makes a great case that he must be the real McCoy, since Beast these days is all stern and serious, unlike the jolly blue goofball that he was back when he was an Avenger. Another powerful moment was that when one of the newly freed prisoners was revealed to have been the thought-to-be deceased Mockingbird, her husband Hawkeye, now going by Ronin, shoved his way to the front and demanded to know the significance of October 12th. Mockingbird reveals that October 12th was supposed to be the birthday of their child before she had a miscarriage, and upon hearing this, Clint grabbed her close for a passionate kiss. She clearly wasn't a Skrull, and at long last, he was reunited with the love of his life. Elsewhere, a doppelganger of Stark's butler Jarvis uploaded an alien virus that served to deactivate every piece of Stark tech on the planet, with the added whammy of physically weakening Tony and kicking off a big old fight scene. During the commotion, Iron Man found shelter to deal with his new sickness and was approached by the Spider-Woman of his team, who revealed that she was the Skrull Queen, and also tried to convince him that he was also a sleeper agent. But Tony was saved by Black Widow, who injected Stark with medicine that would get him back up to speed. Meanwhile, Skrull invasion forces launched their attack on the rest of the planet, which got every super team around doing their part to defend their countries. Because one of Stark's first moves as director of S.H.I.E.L.D. was to set up a super team in every state, most of the US was protected. However, that also bit them in the ass because nearly every single one of said teams had a Skrull infiltrate them prior to the invasion, so there was a Skrull in every state. Notably though, Marvel's version of the Suicide Squad, the Thunderbolts, abandoned their post in Colorado in favor of defending Washington, D.C. Their leader, Norman Osborn, yes, the former Green Goblin Norman Osborn, used this opportunity to get in front of as many cameras as possible in order to brand himself as the ultimate patriot. Norman is out here posing in front of the Lincoln Memorial, yelling stuff like, "For Earth, for freedom," and even stabbing Skrulls with a goddamn American flag. But the icing on the cake is when he takes an interview in the middle of the fight to throw shade at Stark Tech while also hyping up his own company. One of the big things in this event is that every time a Skrull kills someone, they say the phrase, "He loves you." The he in question is their god, Qlybin, the Eternal Skrull. So because this invasion is a holy war that's meant to fulfill an ancient prophecy in his name, Hercules gathers up a god squad to traverse the spiritual realms and kill the Skrull pantheon. It's literally just 2 dudes though, so I don't get why they call it a pantheon in the comics. Like, how many gods does it take to make a pantheon? Let me know in the comments. The Hercules tie-in is a lot of fun, and even though it has a great premise and is one of the most interesting parts of the whole Secret Invasion event, it's not really relevant to the plot itself, so I'm not going to go into detail. Though, definitely pick it up if you're ever going to read this event for yourself, which frankly, you should. Anyway, the Inhumans are making a journey of their own by going out to space to recruit the Skrulls' ancient enemy, the Kree, to essentially reignite the Kree-Skrull War by allying themselves with Earth and wipe out the alien spaceships that are orbiting the planet. The Kree's leader accepts, but only under one condition. Princess Crystal needed to give her hand in marriage. Although Crystal initially refused, Queen Medusa made her do it anyway, but she ended up coming around because she agreed it would be the best move for the safety of the planet. Back on Earth, the Skrulls are trying to get their hands on the Great Vibranium Mound of Wakanda, but as we all know, the country has never fallen, and they got to keep that impressive track record through brilliant tactics and subterfuge. The big event was when a one-on-one fight occurred between T'Challa and a Super Skrull, and much like the Hercules tie-in, this is another one of the highlights of the event that I seriously wish there was more of. I audibly gasped when I read that the T'Challa and Storm that the Skrulls had captured were actually their own soldiers who the Wakandans had made to look like their rulers and embedded voice boxes that played the same pre-recorded clips over and over and over again while they endured torture. It's great stuff, read it. Across the pond, the Skrulls are invading the magical realm of Avalon through a portal in the UK, and it's there that they gathered all sorts of magical relics, including the Holy Grail. And you know what they do with them? They melted these powerful ancient artifacts into a massive gold chain, which they used to bling out their strongest sorcerer. Thankfully though, the invasion force was taken out through the combined might of Captain Britain and a powerful demon. Over in New York, the remaining X-Men did their best to hold off the attackers. And remember how the Beast in the Savage Land was talking about how he must be the real one since he would never be so dark and serious? Well, when trying to science his way into a solution, Beast creates a virus that is both deadly to Skrulls and fast-acting to boot. Ultimately though, he left the hard decision of essentially committing Skrull genocide to Cyclops, who, without hesitation, coats the X-Men's outfit in the virus and gets inside the Skrull ship to infect them by pretending to surrender. But once the alien soldiers start dropping like flies, Cyclops demands that they surrender in exchange for the antidote. Full of pride, the soldiers refuse and instead self-destruct their own ships to save the rest of their race from the ravages of the virus. And you know what the worst part is? Cyclops didn't even ask Beast if they had in fact made an antidote. Holy shit, that's fucked up. Cutting back to the SHIELD lab, Reed Richards is able to uncover the secret of the supposedly undetectable Skrulls, but he was stopped in his tracks by his assistant Hank, who reveals himself as a spy and shot Reed with a gun that destabilizes his form, resulting in him looking like the worst cheese pull on the planet. But after being saved by the head of SWORD, Reed gets to work on building a big gun that he brings to the Savage Land and starts blasting. This device reveals the identity of the Skrulls once and for all, including Mockingbird, which sent Clint into a blind fury as he had to lose his wife all over again by killing her himself. With defeat after defeat, the global invasion force was losing steam, culminating in most of the remaining heroes and troops clashing in one final battle. Punches and energy blasts are coming from every direction. And in the middle of the conflict, Iron Man's armor starts acting up, so he has to leave to go get a new one. But it looks like he's fleeing the battle, and that is not a good look. However, the Skrulls had 2 secret weapons. First off, Hank Pym's imposter had tainted the Wasp's suit in order to turn her into a giant human bomb. And with no other choice, Thor summoned a mystical tornado that scattered her molecules to the wind, which seemingly killed her. With that plan off the table, the Skrulls went straight to the nuclear option. Remember how I said that Tony Stark had placed a super team in every state? Well, because all the imposters slipped under the radar, the Skrulls managed to build towers at every one of those 50 bases that could link together to suck the nation into the negative zone, effectively eliminating the majority of the world's defenders in an instant. On top of that, this technology was created by Tony Stark as a means to suck Manhattan into the other dimension just in case it was taken over by a bad guy. And by the way, Tony did this in secret without approval from the United States government, and the Skrulls got onto that by infiltrating S.H.I.E.L.D. Luckily though, a virtually unknown hero named Crusader noticed the Skrull general fleeing from the battle to activate the portal towers, and he single-handedly saved the planet by taking him out. Crusader is such an interesting character that doesn't get enough love. You seriously need to check out my award-winning video all about him because yeah, he is super underrated. Back at the final stand, Wolverine and Queen Varanki are having an intense 1v1 fight, but she's ultimately taken out by Norman Osborn's neutral special, Gun. Without their leader, the invading forces back off, and Earth was finally safe. And in the aftermath, the heroes managed to find the actual prison ship with all the kidnapped folks. So now they're back for good. And this includes the real Mockingbird. And also Elvis. Slowly but surely, Earth started to recover from the invasion, but the United States government was pissed at Iron Man. Because his team wasn't able to detect the spies, the Skrulls got access to all of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s intel and technology, which again included tech that could have potentially wiped the entire country off the planet. And to make things worse, when the world needed him most, it looked like he vanished. Because of all of these failures, S.H.I.E.L.D. was disbanded, and the keys to American national security were handed over to Norman Osborn, who is publicly known as being a former supervillain. Yeah, being the one that got the kill shot and all that patriotic showboating won over the American people. A lady at his inauguration even held up the sign that said that Norman wouldn't hurt a fly, and when he's called out in a press interview about his villainous past, everyone buys that he's totally a good guy now and gives him a round of applause.
He was the best guy around.
What about the people he murdered?
What murder?
Unsurprisingly, Osborn is still a piece of shit, and he immediately brought together some of the most prominent supervillains in the world to form their own evil version of the Illuminati called the Cabal. And with it in place, the Marvel Universe officially entered the era of Dark Reign. Secret Invasion oftentimes gets a lot of flack from the Marvel fandom because some of the most interesting and frankly some of the most important story threads were relegated to tie-ins and not the core book. And because of that, a lot of people never got the whole experience, including myself until I set out to make this video. Also, Tony Stark suffered severe character assassination during Civil War, with him becoming a straight-up fascist. For a large part of the fandom, he was one of the most hated characters in all of comics, so many were hoping that this could be redeemed by it being revealed that Tony was a Skrull sowing chaos this whole time, and that's why he was acting out of character during Civil War. And although that didn't happen, there was still a sense of schadenfreude that with Stark failing over and over and over again during Secret Invasion, then he was finally getting some of his much-deserved karma. But that's another issue that a lot of people had with the book. There weren't all that many interesting Skrull reveals. The Elektra plot twist leading up to the event was a genuine shock to people, but outside of her, the most prominent folks were Spider-Woman, Sue Storm, Hank Pym, Black Bolt, and Mockingbird, and the majority of them were body swapped right before the event, and none of that is really that interesting. But for as much as folks like to hate on it, I overall think that Secret Invasion is an enjoyable story, with all the big action fights that'll make your inner child go, "Ah, sick, that's so cool." This video is a part of my ongoing project to take deep dives into all of the big Marvel events, so be sure to check out the playlist for more, which includes the prelude to Secret Invasion, the Kree-Skrull War. Thank you guys so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully, I'll see you next time.